My name's Andrew Potocnik and I'm here at Timbecon in their new showroom and shop here in Coburg in Melbourne. Today I'm looking at skews, roughing gouges and this little tool which is a combination of the two. It's called a Skewchigouge. To begin with, I'll look at the spindle gouges and how they connect to each other and how they ultimately relate to skews and then the Skewchigouge. This is a spindle roughing gouge, so when you mount a piece of wood onto your lathe between centres, this is the tool you use to trim it down into a cylinder. This is a 3/4 inch spindle gouge, which is the tool you use once you've roughed down your timber. You can also use it for roughing, but it's used more for doing things like coves and sweeping curves. Next is the 1/2 inch spindle gouge or a 13mm spindle gouge. Very similar to the 3/4 inch with a fairly broad curve in the flute. The 1/2 inch spindle gouge is very similar to the 3/4 inch, except that it will let you get into tighter spots. This is a 1/2 inch detail gouge, and the difference between this and the roughing gouges is that it has a much longer fingernail grind on the bevel side, and it enables you to get right into tight corners, especially when you're rolling beads or doing any detail work. Now we're moving on to skews, and they come in a variety of different formations, but in essence what they consist of is a flat blade with an angled cutting edge. This one has got square edges all the way around the blade. This one here has a rolled edge on the bottom and the top edge of the blade, so that you can roll the tool easily on a tool rest. This one has another modification. It has the rolled edges, but it also has a radiused cutting area so that you don't have as much blade in contact with the wood when you're working. Another variation is a round bar skew, and this one is quite easy to rotate and roll from left to right. Another of the benefits of the Skewchigouge is its versatility. You can use it as a skew, and you can also use it as a hollowing tool. For instance, if you are hollowing into end grain to make a container, for instance, or a lidded container, you can use the tool rolled on its side as a shear scraper to create the walls and the inner part of your container. If you're using it as a skew, one of the real benefits is that you don't run the risk of getting a catch anywhere near as quickly as you would with a conventional skew. Seeing I'm here at Timbecon, I'm using one of their M320 lathes. It's a nice little compact lathe with a variable speed switch and just nice and easy to use. Very solidly made too. So I'll now give you a bit of a demonstration on how various tools are used, starting off with the spindle roughing gouge. To rough down this piece of wood, I used a spindle roughing gouge, which has got quite a broad surface area for cutting with, and there are very few chances of getting a catch, but this is the main job that it performs. Having a look at how the skew works, I'm going to show you a couple of different operations that can be performed with the skew. You can see on the surface here that the surface that is left after using the roughing gouge is a little rough, whereas this part here where I've already done some planing cuts with the skew is much smoother, and you can virtually eliminate sanding if you get a really good cut. So let's have a look at some of the things that can be done with the skew. Looking at the anatomy of a skew, basically you've got a flat blade. In this case it has a radiused or a rolled edge on the bottom and on the top. The important thing to keep in mind is we've got what we call a short point and a long point. When you're using your skew you need to be very, very careful because you can get some really nasty catches. First thing you do is make sure your tool rest is way above centre. Secondly, you lay the tool onto the piece of wood, allowing the bevel to touch the wood, and then you slowly raise the handle up so that the blade can engage in with the wood. The key thing though is make sure you use the middle to the lower half of the blade, otherwise you'll get a catch. Okay, I'm going to look at a couple of the different cuts that you can use your skew for. First there's the planing cut, where we have the tool rest raised above centre and we place the tool onto the surface of the wood, gradually raise the handle up so the tip starts to cut, and we should end up with a really nice smooth surface. Okay, a couple of other things you can use the skew for. In this case I'm going to cut some decorative V lines or V grooves, and what I do this time is I make sure I use the long point, not the short point nor the actual blade itself. I just want the tip of the blade working, otherwise I don't get a nice clean cut. To cut your V grooves you need to cut from two sides, cutting from the left to the centre and from the right to the centre, so you get a nice neat intersection in the cuts. The beauty of this is that being a nice sharp edge, you should have cleanly severed fibres, so you don't need any sanding in there. And it's up to you how many of these cuts you use and where you're going to apply them to your work. Another of the uses of the skew is for peeling cuts. Now that's when you use the tool just as if you are slicing a peel off an apple, I suppose, and it's used when you want to make some tenons, so that you might want to make a leg that joins into a tabletop. So let's have a look at the tool in action. So what I've done here is I've used the tool as a peeling tool to turn a tenon, then I use the long point to cut the shoulder so I have nice smooth timber, and then I cut a nice little V intersection at the base of the tenon where the two surfaces meet up, so that I get a nice clean intersection of timber. So I'm looking at the Skewchigouge and comparing it to a normal skew and what the differences are. Now I mentioned before the short point and the long point of the skew, the straight blade and the rolled edges for ease of manoeuvring on your tool rest. The Skewchie is more like a gouge, so it's got a fingernail pointed tip, and it has the rounded bar, so you can roll it from side to side with ease, and you can roll it right onto its side and get that point there cutting straight into your wood, just as you would with the long point of the skew. Another way that you can use a Skewchigouge is for hollowing the inside of something like a container, for instance. Imagine you're trying to make this hollow container or lidded container. You could hollow all of the inside part with the Skewchie, but this time you'd be using the tool on its side as a shear scraping tool, rather than similarly to the skew that we were trying to replace before. If I was making this little lidded container, I can use the Skewchigouge to do the outside curve here, which is just a nice, smooth flowing, gentle curve. So let's have a go at doing that, and you'll find this is a really useful and versatile tool, and I'm really surprised that there is so little information available about it and how it's used. So hopefully I'm showing you a few different ways to use it. On this container I have this nice little V line cut into the base or lower section, just to create some visual interest and to create almost a border-like appearance. Earlier on I showed you how to do that with a skew. Let's try that with a Skewchie now to see how it compares. Another of the benefits of the Skewchigouge is its versatility. You can use it as a skew, and you can also use it as a hollowing tool. For instance, if you are hollowing into end grain to make a container, for instance, or a lidded container, you can use the tool rolled on its side as a shear scraper to create the walls and the inner part of your container. If you're using it as a skew, one of the real benefits is that you don't run the risk of getting a catch anywhere near as quickly as you would with a conventional skew. You'll be able to find the full range of Crown tools, both the conventional high-speed steel ones and the cryogenic tools, at Timbecon, either in Reservoir in Melbourne or over in Perth, or online at timbecon.com.au.